Every single person has an inner critic. I used to ask large audience, is there anyone here who does not have an inner critic? Not one hand went up, total silence. Some people call it the imposter syndrome, meaning that you're telling yourself, maybe constantly, very soon I'll be found out for the fraud that I am. This is a phenomenon that we must address early on in this course in order to be able to release and discover the hidden gifts that are behind this otherwise menacing voice. It's a voice that dominates and inhibits many people's lives, and a voice that can grievously interfere with the purpose of the heart. So this part of the course takes us into the darker sides of ourselves, which may not be comfortable. But in this module, you'll learn a vital skill which can change your life. It's the skill and the methodology to show you how to make an ally, a helper, out of what seems most fearful and dangerous, namely the bully that may have dominated your life so far. And this is an absolutely central asset in developing the self-knowledge, the self-confidence, and the courage to become a person able to build a safer world. So today's the day to confront, to tame, and dare I say it, to actually make an ally out of your own inner critic. Let's get this in context. Within every one of us, there are these critical forces that can crush our imagination and cripple our energy. If it's an important occasion, the critic can suddenly shrivel our ideas, freeze our brain, and reduce us to helpless inaction. Or, in the dark of the night, the critic will wake us up and bully us with threats of what we haven't been prepared to do, what we haven't done, or castigating the mistakes that we've made or might make. I'm told that even the most successful people, business tycoons, generals in the army, top civil servants, suffer from what is called imposter syndrome, meaning they fear that they will be unmasked as a fraud. So these inner criticisms are disturbing, they're threatening, and they make us fearful. They take away our mojo. They can be the forces that breed anger inside us. Why? Because when we cannot face what the critic is constantly telling us is wrong with us, so what we do is tend to project this inadequacy out onto others in the form of criticism or accusation. And these are the forces we need to face and transform. And it certainly is hard work facing our inner critic. But there's a bonus hidden in this work, because the inner critic often has a secret for us below all the carping. And you'll see in your workbooks a drawing, a portrait really, of a fire-breathing dragon. Well, that's my inner critic. And he still tries to bully me at 3 o'clock in the morning. But I've now converted him into an ally. So this is the practice that works for me in order to discover that there is a diamond underneath the dragon's claw. And it may seem mad, but do give it a try and you may be surprised at the results. Let's suppose that the inner critic gets traction in the following way. You've got a big date coming up, a challenge, and you begin to doubt your abilities to cope. You're suddenly ambushed by an incident in your past, something that happened made you look silly or embarrassed, and you felt inadequately prepared. A carping voice sits on your shoulder saying, "You don't belong. You're not good enough to do this. They don't love you. You're a fraud. You know you're a fraud." So the inner critic can sabotage any of us at any time with these mutterings. So what I want to offer you is one way to transform it, using your courage to actually meet the dragon, or whatever it appears to you, of your inner critic. So please start with a short contemplation of this intriguing being. Please close your eyes and take a very deep breath, 4 very deep breaths, in and out. Now, connect with your inner critic, most probably a voice at first. Listening to that voice, please identify the strongest phrase it uses, the one that makes you shrink. Now, please see if there's an image. It might be an animal, a person, a film character. Does it have a gender? Can you see an image at all? Notice if you feel fear or anger or repulsion. Keep the image, the feeling, or the voice in your consciousness as you proceed to deal with this creature. Next time your critic attacks you after a big event or an argument or wakes you up in the middle of the night, breathe deeply and calmly for a few minutes, and then set out 2 cushions or chairs. Sit on one and speak to your inner critic as if it was sitting opposite you. Ask it, why are you bothering me? What do you want of me? Then get up and actually go and sit in the inner critic's chair and answer as if you were the inner critic. It may feel a little strange, but you'll find that if you give it a chance, it will speak very clearly, possibly in a voice that you didn't even know you had. But at first it will probably just repeat the same kind of accusations as before. So be courageous. You're dealing with fears that have been around for a long time. So go back to your own cushion, your own chair, and tell the critic, you're not being very helpful. Please tell me what I need to know. You have to be very tough and quite bossy with your inner critic because they've gained a lot of strength over you in the past years. Mine certainly had. Then you go across to the critic's place and you answer again. And what you'll find is that the critic's voice begins to change. You begin to develop a dialogue where it starts to be more practical and actually begins to give friendlier advice. Continue the process, insisting on knowing what the critic knows, because it knows something that you're not actually conscious of yet. Go on until you hear something that you didn't know you knew. This is the surprise. This is the diamond. Then, and this may take many sessions. It took me a good 6 months to do this, so I'm giving you a collapsed version. See if you can agree a plan with the critic and use this diamond as a guide for yourself. In the process, if you can keep it going, the critic always has exceptional wisdom. It knows something that I needed to know in that situation. Ultimately, the fire-breathing dragon, having been fearful, becomes a friend and a guide. Shevakar, who you'll meet in a later module, says, any progress is a lot of progress when reducing fear. Be patient. So here's a true story to illustrate. In the Balkans War, during the siege of Sarajevo in 1994, 2 convoys of women from around the world were journeyed to Zagreb in Croatia to take relief supplies to Sarajevo, which was under siege. We had to stop in East Mostar to get permits to cross the lines and get into Sarajevo. And that meant we had to go across a wire bridge across the river. The beautiful old bridge had been destroyed. And we had to walk through one of the most terrifying situations I've ever seen the total desolation of this city, bombed to the ground. People were coming out of their homes and had been eating grass all winter. And they dragged us to the graveyard where their loved ones were buried. It was heartbreaking. Eventually, we got to the war presidency, which was where the permits for us to get to Sarajevo could or could not be given to us. And it was heavily guarded. And there was a soldier with a very big automatic standing at the door with his arms crossed and the gun at his side, looking very, very unfriendly. And the two Muslim women that I was with started to talk to him. And I didn't understand a word of what they were saying, of course. So all I could do was to meditate. And so I did. And into my heart came the image of a rose, a red rose. And I thought, oh, that's a bit naff, that's a bit frilly. And so I banished the red rose. And then it came back again. So I mentally took the red rose and put it in the heart of this young soldier. And at that moment, his face cracked. He began to smile. He loosened his body, stepped aside, and opened the door. And my two colleagues went in upstairs to see the general to hopefully get the permits. And I sat down below with the secretary, crossing my fingers that they would be successful. The secretary and I had no words in common. After a while, she got up and went out. She came back with her hands behind her back. And then, as the women came down the stairs, clutching the permits, she brought out a handful of 3 red roses. Where she got them from in that bombed-out city, I have no idea. But she gave us those red roses and we took them with us to Sarajevo. So that's a little story to show that when we're up against it, when we don't know what to do and we feel we haven't done enough, that everything can change through being quiet and going inside and seeing what's there. This is the conclusion to Module 4 on the inner critic. In this module, which I think is my favourite actually, you have done something quite remarkable. You've learned and dared to confront your inner critic. While most of us simply try to ignore it. Ignoring it doesn't work because it will simply reappear and ambush us at a vulnerable moment. What you've tasted here is the possibility to identify your inner critic, to set it aside from you and ask it what it wants, and then to be yourself, to become bigger than your inner critic, converting its power into a source of wisdom. Doing this, you may experience a sense of energy being freed up. But getting there is not easy, and it takes courage and persistence. But if you persist, by recognizing that this is a normal syndrome that even the most successful people have to deal with, you can transform the critic into your ally, your guide. This module, with practice, will enable you to stand up to that inner critic and learn how it can become a friend by demanding to know what it knows about your life that you need to know. So valuable. Thank you.